Interns don't talk back. Got it? The words cracked through the air like a whip. The office fell into silence, except for the hum of computers and the faint whir of the air conditioner. Dozens of eyes darted toward the young black woman standing near the conference room table. Her name was Amara Johnson, dressed in a plain blouse and second-hand shoes, her notebook pressed tightly against her chest as though it could shield her from the sting of humiliation. The man barking at her was Gregory Blake, the senior regional manager, a tall, sharp-faced man in a tailored gray suit who enjoyed wielding power like a weapon. His sneer stretched wide as he leaned across the polished oak table, making sure every intern in the room could hear. "You're here to fetch coffee, file papers, and keep quiet," Blake continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "Not to share ideas. This is corporate America, sweetheart, not some college debate club." A nervous chuckle rippled through a few employees, desperate to stay on Blake's good side. But most sat stiffly, their eyes lowered, unwilling to meet Amara's gaze. No one wanted to be caught siding with the girl who had just been publicly cut down. Amara's chest burned, but her face remained composed. She had prepared herself for disrespect, but even so, the sting of his words sliced deeper than expected. She could hear her grandmother's voice echoing from the past, soft but firm, "Baby, they'll underestimate you because of your skin, your gender, your youth. Don't let them see you break." So she didn't break. Instead, she lowered her eyes, scribbled something in her notebook, and sat quietly. Outwardly, she seemed to retreat. Inwardly, however, she was recording every detail, every insult, every flash of arrogance that would one day fuel a reckoning. Because what Blake, and everyone else in that conference room, didn't know was the truth. Amara Johnson wasn't just another intern hoping to climb the corporate ladder. She was the daughter of Elias Johnson, the black billionaire who had built this empire brick by brick. The gleaming skyscraper they sat in bore his initials on the glass, though few ever connected the dots. Amara had chosen to come here undercover, disguised as an intern, because her father wanted her to see firsthand what his managers were doing when they thought no one was watching. And what she saw was worse than either of them had imagined. Blake strutted back to the head of the table and slammed a stack of papers down. "Now that little interruption is over, let's move on. Numbers are down, profits are sliding, but hey, at least we've got interns to keep the copy machines warm." His jab landed like another slap across Amara's face. She scribbled in her notebook again, her pen steady despite her racing pulse. Each insult, each cruel word was fuel, not just for herself, but for the hundreds of employees who suffered in silence under men like Blake. The meeting dragged on for another hour. When it finally ended, Amara slipped out quickly, weaving through the buzzing halls filled with stressed-out workers. She noticed details others overlooked, the defeated slump of shoulders, whispered conversations about unpaid overtime, the way janitors avoided eye contact with managers. It was a culture of fear, one her father had warned her about, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. By the time she reached her cubicle, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from her father. "First day check-in. How bad?" Amara stared at the words, her throat tightening. She typed back slowly. "Worse than you think." Her finger hovered over the send button. She hesitated, then added, "But don't worry. I'll handle it." She pressed send, slid the phone back into her bag, and pulled out her hidden recorder, a small device tucked neatly between the pages of her notebook. Every word from that meeting had been captured. Evidence. She knew it was only the beginning. Outside, the office skyline glimmered in the afternoon sun, but Amara's mind burned with a different kind of fire. She could still hear Gregory Blake's voice echoing in her ears, "Interns don't talk back. Got it?" Oh. She'd talk back. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And when she did, it wouldn't be as an intern. It would be as the rightful heir to the entire empire. And the managers who mocked her would never see it coming. Did you really think no one would notice? The question sliced through the hushed chatter of the break room. Amara froze, her styrofoam cup of coffee trembling in her hands. She turned slowly, only to find Gregory Blake standing in the doorway, arms crossed, his smirk stretching like a blade across his face. "You've been scribbling in that little notebook of yours all day," he said, stepping closer. And you know what? It's starting to get on my nerves. The other interns glanced nervously between them, their sandwiches half-eaten, their bottled waters untouched. No one dared to speak. They had already witnessed what happened in the conference room. No one wanted to be the next target. Amara kept her composure, though her pulse hammered in her chest. She tilted her head slightly, her voice calm. "It's just notes, sir. About the job." "Job?" Blake laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "Sweetheart, fetching coffee and stapling papers isn't a job. It's charity. And don't think for one second that you're fooling anyone with those wide eyes and that quiet act. You're not cut out for this place. People like you never are." The words landed heavy, sharper than any blade. "People like you." It wasn't the first time Amara had heard that phrase in her life, but somehow, in this sterile corporate room, it cut deeper. Her grandmother's voice stirred again in her mind, "Hold your fire, baby girl. There's power in silence, until it's time to roar." So she stayed silent. For now. Blake leaned in closer, lowering his voice just enough that only she could hear. "Don't get any ideas about moving up here. This company doesn't need interns who think they're smarter than the bosses. Keep your head down, and maybe, just maybe, you'll last the summer." He straightened up, flashed his cold smile to the others in the room, and strutted out as though he'd just won a war. The moment the door closed, the break room erupted in whispers. "Did you hear that?" one intern muttered. "He's out of control," another said softly. But no one dared to raise their voice. Not in a place where fear ruled every hallway. Amara sat down at the corner table, opened her notebook, and wrote 4 words, "They think I'm weak." But she didn't feel weak. She felt fire. Later that day, she shadowed another manager, Ms. Patel, a mid-level supervisor with tired eyes and a voice always on edge. Amara quickly realized why. Ms. Patel worked tirelessly, juggling spreadsheets and phone calls, all while covering for her team. Yet every time she made a decision, Blake or another senior manager swooped in to undermine her. "Don't mind them," Patel whispered as they walked between cubicles. "This place has been toxic for years. You keep your head down, do what they ask, and maybe you'll get out in one piece." "Is it really that bad?" Amara asked quietly. Patel gave a humorless laugh. "Worse. They cut corners, fudge numbers, silence complaints. But if you try to fight back, you're gone. They'll blackball you from the entire industry. I've seen careers destroyed in weeks." Amara's stomach tightened. She wanted to shout the truth, to tell Patel that she wasn't just another powerless intern. That she had the ability to change everything. But revealing her identity now would ruin everything. She needed evidence. She needed them to expose themselves fully. And so, she waited. She listened. She recorded. By Friday afternoon, she had hours of audio stored in her small device, Blake mocking employees, another manager bragging about firing a single mother for leaving early to pick up her child, even a conversation where they joked about never promoting certain types of people. Each recording was a brick in the case she was building, a wall of truth that would one day come crashing down on their empire of arrogance. But the real turning point came during the end-of-week staff meeting. Blake strutted into the conference room, a stack of performance charts in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. Numbers are down because people are lazy. Because too many of you think this is a charity organization instead of a business." He slammed the papers on the table. "And let's not even talk about our interns. Half of them won't make it past next week. Especially the ones who think they're too good for the job." His eyes flicked to Amara, lingering just long enough for everyone to notice. The room went silent, tension crackling like electricity. Amara met his stare calmly, refusing to flinch. She wrote another line in her notebook, "The clock is ticking." And it was. Because what Blake didn't know was that the following Monday, the company's quarterly board meeting would take place. Every senior executive, every decision-maker, and her father himself would be present. Amara planned to attend. Not as an intern, but as the heir. And when she walked into that boardroom, she would no longer be the quiet girl with a notebook. She would be the voice of every employee they had silenced, every worker they had humiliated, every life they had broken for profit. Blake thought he had silenced her. But all he had really done was give her the perfect stage. Pack your things. You're done here. The words crashed into Amara's ears like a thunderclap. She looked up from her desk to see Mr. Collins, another senior manager, standing over her with folded arms and narrowed eyes. "Excuse me," she asked calmly, though her heart thudded in her chest. "You heard me," Collins sneered. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, scribbling in that little notebook, asking too many questions, poking your nose where it doesn't belong. But I won't have some intern disrupting my department. Get your stuff, now." The office fell into silence. Dozens of employees stopped typing, their eyes flicking nervously between Amara and Collins. No one dared to intervene, but the tension told its own story. They were watching. They were hoping. Amara closed her notebook with deliberate care. "Are you firing me for taking notes?" Collins leaned in, his voice low but filled with venom. "I'm firing you because you don't belong here. And if you push back, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." Her grandmother's voice whispered again, "They'll try to break you, baby girl. But remember, storms make trees take deeper roots." Amara inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "If that's how you feel, sir, I'll be sure to include it in my report." Collins blinked. "Report? What report?" But Amara didn't answer. Instead, she stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked calmly toward the exit. Each step felt like fire in her veins, like chains snapping free. Because what Collins didn't know was that every word, every insult, every veiled threat had been recorded. And she wasn't leaving in defeat. She was leaving to prepare for war. That evening, Amara sat at her small apartment desk, her notebook open, her recordings lined up on her laptop screen. She pressed play, listening again to Blake's mocking laughter, Collins's threats, the casual cruelty of managers who treated human lives like disposable tools. It wasn't just corruption, it was rot. A sickness festering inside a company her family had built with sweat, sacrifice, and vision. She flipped to a fresh page in her notebook and wrote 3 words in bold letters: "No more silence." Her phone buzzed. It was Ms. Patel. "Amara, are you okay? I heard what Collins did today." "I'm fine," Amara said softly. "But thank you." No one else even spoke up. Patel's voice trembled. "We wanted to, but we're all afraid. People here have mortgages, families, student loans. They can't risk losing their jobs. Not when managers like him have the power to destroy everything." Amara's heart ached at the honesty in her voice. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every employee silenced by fear. "Ms. Patel," she said firmly, "what if I told you things are about to change?" A pause. Then Patel whispered, almost in disbelief, "Change? In this place?" "Amara, I've been here 10 years. Nothing changes." "Then maybe it's time someone forced it to." The next morning, word spread quickly. The quarterly board meeting was happening upstairs. Executives in sharp suits streamed into the building, their polished shoes clicking against marble floors. Security hovered near the elevators, ensuring only high-level staff could enter. But Amara had a plan. She slipped on a tailored blazer, one that once belonged to her mother, and tied her curls back neatly. To anyone passing by, she looked less like an intern and more like someone meant to be there. As she approached the elevator, Blake's voice rang out behind her. "Where do you think you're going?" Amara turned. Blake stood with 2 other managers, his smirk dripping arrogance. "Interns don't belong upstairs," he sneered. "You've already caused enough trouble. If it were up to me, you'd be out the door already." For a moment, Amara considered revealing herself then and there. Telling him that she had more right to be upstairs than he ever would. But not yet. Timing was everything. "I'm just delivering a file," she said smoothly, holding up her notebook. "I was asked to bring it." Blake's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. But the elevator doors slid open, and she stepped inside before he could reply. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls. She whispered to herself, "This ends today." The boardroom glowed with mahogany polish and golden light. Around the long table sat executives worth billions, men and women whose decisions rippled across entire industries. And at the head of the table, seated with quiet authority, was her father, CEO Jonathan Carter. Amara lingered in the doorway, heart racing, waiting for the right moment. Jonathan's deep voice filled the room. "Before we begin, I want to address the recent complaints from staff about toxic management. This is a matter of great concern to me personally. And today, I've invited someone who can shed light on what's really happening inside our walls." Every head turned toward the door. Amara stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The room fell into stunned silence. Blake, who had followed behind her, sputtered. "Sir, this is just an intern. She has no business." But Jonathan raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "This is not just an intern. This is my daughter, Amara Carter. And she has the floor." The room erupted in gasps. Blake's face drained of color. Collins gripped the arm of his chair. Ms. Patel, seated near the back, covered her mouth in shock. Amara set her notebook on the table, her voice steady, carrying the weight of every silenced worker. "I've spent the last month undercover in this company. I've been insulted, threatened, and dismissed, because I was seen as powerless. But I wasn't powerless. I was listening. I was recording. And I was waiting." She pressed play on her recorder. Blake's mocking words filled the room, followed by Collins's threats. Each sentence landed like a hammer, smashing their carefully crafted images. The boardroom grew colder, heavier, as the truth settled in. Amara looked directly at the managers who had tried to break her. "You thought I was weak. But what you really did, was prove yourselves unworthy of the company my family built." The silence that followed was suffocating. The managers shifted nervously in their seats, sweat beading on their foreheads. And then her father spoke, his voice like thunder, "Gentlemen, your time here is over. You're finished here. Every single one of you." Jonathan Carter's words fell like a gavel in a courtroom, final and undeniable. For a long moment, the only sound in the boardroom was the faint hum of the air conditioning and the nervous shuffle of feet under the table. Collins's face turned red, his jaw tightening as though he wanted to argue, but even he knew the evidence was undeniable. Blake tried to stammer out a defense, "Sir, I was only what?" Amara cut in sharply, her voice carrying the steady rhythm of truth. "Only mocking your employees until they broke down in tears. Only threatening careers because you thought no one was watching. Only treating this company like your playground, while real families struggled under your arrogance." Blake froze. His mouth open, no words able to escape. His downfall was unfolding in real time, and he couldn't stop it. Amara let her gaze sweep across the room, meeting the eyes of every executive. "For weeks, I walked your halls as an invisible intern. And what I saw wasn't just mismanagement. It was rot. Corruption. Cruelty dressed in tailored suits. And while you looked away, the people on the ground floor, the employees who actually make this company run, were paying the price." Gasps rippled through the room. Patel's eyes shimmered with tears, her hands trembling as she clasped them in her lap. For her, and for so many others, this was vindication. Jonathan leaned forward, his tone measured but unyielding. "This company was built by my grandfather with a vision of dignity, equality, and community. My father carried that torch. And I refuse to let entitled managers burn it to ashes. From this day forward, there will be sweeping reforms." He turned to his daughter. "Amara, you've seen this company through fresh eyes. What reforms do you propose?" The room grew tense again. Blake and Collins looked like men awaiting a sentence. And in truth, they were. Amara inhaled, her grandmother's words echoing in her heart, "Baby girl, when you see wrong, don't just call it out. Replace it with what's right. I propose immediate termination of every manager involved in these abuses," she began. But beyond that, we need to create a culture of accountability. Anonymous reporting channels. Independent audits of management. Diversity and sensitivity training that actually matters, not just a box to tick. And most importantly, employees must feel safe speaking truth to power. Her words rolled over the boardroom like a rising tide, impossible to resist. One of the older board members, Mr. Hawkins, cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, these changes, they sound costly. Disruptive. Are you certain they're necessary?" Amara's eyes locked on him. "What's more costly, Mr. Hawkins, building a just company, or letting corruption destroy us from within? What's more disruptive, firing a few men who abuse their power, or letting their abuse drive away talent, trust, and our reputation?" The silence that followed was deafening. Hawkins lowered his eyes. No one dared challenge her again. Then came the crack of thunder, the moment no one expected. Blake stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the polished floor. "This is absurd," he shouted, his face flushed. "I've worked here for 15 years. You think some spoiled billionaire's daughter can waltz in here, play pretend as an intern, and lecture us on how to run a company? You're nothing but a child who got lucky by being born into wealth." The room stiffened. Everyone braced for Amara's response. But she didn't shout. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice low but filled with fire. "Lucky?" she repeated. "Do you think it was luck when my grandfather faced down segregation to build this company from the ground up? Do you think it was luck when my father worked 18-hour days, sacrificing his health to expand it across the globe? And do you think it's luck when I, after everything they endured, choose to walk among the very people you mistreat, to understand their pain and expose your corruption?" Her words sliced through him like glass. Blake stumbled back, speechless. "This isn't luck," Amara continued, her voice rising with the weight of generations. "This is legacy. And legacy is earned." For a moment, the room erupted, not in applause, but in murmurs, in gasps, in a sense that something larger was happening. It was no longer about one woman against a few corrupt men. It was about justice long delayed but finally arriving. News traveled fast. Within hours, whispers of the boardroom explosion began to leak downstairs. Employees huddled in break rooms, refreshing their phones, watching as the story spread on social media. "Did you hear? That intern was actually the CEO's daughter." "No way." "She exposed Blake and Collins. Fired on the spot. They said she had recordings, real proof. Man, maybe things are about to change here." For the first time in years, hope flickered in the eyes of everyday workers. Ms. Patel walked past a cluster of employees whispering and paused. "It's true," she said softly. "I was there. I saw it with my own eyes." Gasps. Then, slowly, smiles began to spread. But upstairs, not everyone was smiling. Collins had cornered Jonathan in the hallway after the meeting, desperation written across his face. "Sir, please, you can't do this. Think about the investors. Think about stability. I was loyal to this company for decades." Jonathan's gaze was cold. "Loyalty means nothing when it's built on cruelty. You're finished, Collins. Security will escort you out." And just like that, Collins's career ended not with a bang, but with the quiet shame of a man caught in his own lies. Blake, meanwhile, tried one last desperate move. He stormed into HR, shouting about wrongful termination, about lawyers, about how he wouldn't go down quietly. But when Amara herself walked into the room, her recorder in hand, his threats evaporated like mist. "You really want to bring this to court, Mr. Blake?" she asked evenly. "Because I have hours of recordings that would bury you. And I'd be happy to let the world hear them." He froze. His arrogance crumbled. And for the first time, Blake knew what it felt like to be powerless. Downstairs, the cafeteria buzzed with energy. Employees who had been beaten down by years of silence now dared to laugh again, to hope again. Someone turned on gospel music quietly in the background, a hymn of freedom and resilience that carried through the air like a promise. And in that moment, Amara knew, this wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about her family's legacy. It was about every worker who had ever been silenced. Every dream deferred. Every injustice buried. And tomorrow, the world was going to hear their story. Breaking news: Black CEO's daughter exposes corruption inside Carter Enterprises. The headline lit up television screens, news apps, and social media feeds across the country. Within hours, Amara's undercover story had gone viral. Clips of her confrontation with Blake were circulating on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Millions watched in disbelief as she stripped corruption bare in the boardroom. But while the world was celebrating, inside the Carter household the night felt heavy. Jonathan sat at the long oak dining table, hands clasped tightly, staring at the family portraits lining the wall. His father's image, a black man in a crisp suit, eyes full of determination, seemed to watch him, reminding him of everything that was at stake. Amara entered quietly, her expression calm but her shoulders carrying the weight of the day. "It's everywhere, Daddy," she whispered, setting her phone on the table. "Every network. Every platform. People know now." Jonathan sighed deeply. "That's good, baby girl. It's what needed to happen. But exposure is only the first step. The real fight begins tomorrow." At Carter Enterprises, employees gathered around phones and laptops, watching the confrontation unfold again and again. For the first time in years, laughter rang through the break rooms, not mocking laughter, but the laughter of release, of chains falling. "You see the way she shut Blake down," one worker said, shaking his head in awe. "She's fearless," another added. "She's not just a Carter, she's one of us." Ms. Patel wiped tears from her cheeks as she whispered, "Justice finally feels possible." But upstairs in the executive suites, fear was setting in. Collins had been escorted from the building. Blake had locked himself in his office, phones buzzing with unanswered calls from lawyers. And yet, others remained, plotting. "We can't let her control the narrative," hissed Sandra Liu, the head of PR, "if she paints this as systemic corruption, investors will flee. Stocks will crash." Another manager leaned in. "Then we flip the story. Make it about a spoiled billionaire's daughter playing games with hardworking executives. If we make her look reckless, entitled, maybe we survive this." They didn't realize Amara was already 3 steps ahead. The next morning, Amara walked into the office not in her intern's modest blouse and slacks, but in a tailored black suit that shimmered with quiet authority. Every eye followed her as she passed, whispers trailing in her wake. "She's back. She's in charge now. She's the future." When she reached the conference hall, the cameras were already waiting. Local news outlets, national reporters, even international journalists had gathered to hear her speak. She stepped to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and let the silence stretch just long enough to hold the room in her hands. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady, each word sharp as glass. "My name is Amara Carter. For weeks, I walked this company as an intern. I was mocked. Ignored. Dismissed. But that invisibility gave me the chance to see this company for what it truly is, not what it pretends to be." The crowd leaned forward. Employees, reporters, even executives felt the pull of her words. "I saw managers abusing their power. I saw workers silenced through fear. I saw corruption, arrogance, and cruelty. And I saw something else, something stronger than all of that. I saw the spirit of this workforce. I saw resilience, compassion, and brilliance. And today, I am here to tell you, the days of silence are over." The room erupted in applause. Some employees even stood, tears streaming down their faces as they clapped. But Amara wasn't finished. Effective immediately, Blake Thompson and every manager implicated in misconduct have been terminated. "We will be establishing a new code of ethics, overseen by an independent board. And for the first time in this company's history, employees will have direct representation in decision-making. Because this company does not belong to corrupt executives, it belongs to every single person who builds it, day by day." The roar of approval nearly shook the walls. Watching from the shadows, Blake's hands trembled with rage. His career was over. His name was ruined. But his bitterness twisted into something darker, a need for revenge. She thinks she can humiliate me on live television, he muttered, pacing in his office. She thinks she can end me. No, no, I'll end her first. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. I need everything you can dig up on Amara Carter. Dirt, rumors, anything. If I'm going down, I'm taking her with me. That night, Amara returned home, exhausted but resolute. She sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea, her grandmother's quilt draped over her shoulders. The stars stretched above, endless and silent. Her father joined her, his presence grounding her as always. You did good today, he said softly. Your grandfather would be proud. She smiled faintly. I don't feel finished, Daddy. This is bigger than Carter Enterprises. It's about every young black woman who's ever been told she doesn't belong. It's about every worker silenced by fear. I have to keep going. Jonathan nodded slowly. Then keep going. Just remember, you don't fight alone. You carry all of us with you. Her heart swelled. She thought of Rosa Parks refusing her seat, of Martin's dream echoing across generations, of her grandmother's hymns filling their small church. She was part of something bigger, something timeless. And as the crickets sang and the night held her in its quiet arms, Amara whispered to herself, the story isn't over yet. It's just beginning. The morning after her fiery speech, Amara arrived at Carter Enterprises to a storm she hadn't expected. Papers littered the lobby floor. Employees huddled in clusters, whispering anxiously, their phones glowing with headlines. Carter heiress caught in scandal. Amara Carter's dark secrets revealed. Is she fit to lead? Amara froze. She reached for her phone. Notifications flooded the screen, news articles, blog posts, viral tweets. They all carried the same poisoned narrative. She clicked one at random. Her photo filled the page, eyes downcast, manipulated to look ashamed. The headline screamed, Amara Carter cheated her way into Princeton. Her heart sank. She knew exactly where this was coming from. Blake. Upstairs in his apartment, Blake lounged on a leather chair, smirking at the chaos he'd unleashed. Entitled. Spoiled. Fraud. The words rolled off his tongue like a curse. Let's see how the public feels about their so-called savior now. His hired PR team sat nervously across from him. Sir, the documents you released, most of them are unverified. If the Carters sue. They won't, Blake snapped. Because by the time they figure it out, the damage will be done. In the office, Amara stood tall despite the whispers cutting through the air like knives. She knew the truth. She hadn't cheated. She'd studied late nights, worked through exhaustion, earned every acceptance letter that came her way. But lies spread faster than truth, and Blake knew that. Her phone buzzed again. It was a call from Jennifer Rhodes, a reporter she trusted. Amara, Jennifer said carefully, I need to warn you. Blake's feeding every outlet he can. Fake transcripts, fake witnesses. If you don't act fast, this story will define you, not your speech. Amara swallowed hard. Then we don't just defend. We fight. He wants a war, he'll get one. By noon, she held a press conference in the same hall where she had spoken the day before. But this time, her eyes burned with fire. Let me be clear, she began, her voice echoing through the cameras. Lies have been spread to discredit me, to silence me, to make you forget what really matters. This isn't about my education. This is about corruption. This is about workers bullied into silence. This is about managers who lined their pockets while employees suffered. She lifted a folder, holding it high. And I have proof. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters leaned forward, lenses clicking furiously. These are internal emails, she continued, sent by executives, including Blake Thompson, ordering employees to falsify financial reports, to intimidate whistleblowers, to bury sexual harassment claims. These are not rumors. These are documents. Verified by an independent legal team. And I am releasing them today, publicly, for everyone to see. Chaos erupted. Questions shouted. Cameras flashed. In living rooms across America, families watched as Amara turned the narrative upside down. She wasn't just defending herself, she was dismantling the very structure of corruption that had festered in Carter Enterprises. Back in his apartment, Blake's smirk vanished as news anchors repeated her words. Verified, legal team, public release. He grabbed the remote and hurled it across the room. No, no, no. His phone rang. It was his lawyer. Blake, you need to get out of town. If those emails are real, you're looking at federal charges. Blake's hands shook. She can't win. Not like this. But deep down, he knew, the walls were closing in. Meanwhile, within Carter Enterprises, the employees who had once worked in fear now stood tall. Workers clapped as Amara walked through the halls, no longer the intern they ignored, but the leader they respected. You saved us, one whispered. No, Amara corrected gently, we saved each other. Her father watched from the sidelines, pride swelling in his chest. For years, he had built the company, brick by brick, against every barrier thrown at him as a black man in business. And now, his daughter was carrying the torch, not just preserving the legacy but reshaping it. That evening, Amara returned home, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken. She sat at the piano, her grandmother's old piano, worn but beautiful. Her fingers glided across the keys, filling the room with gospel hymns she'd grown up hearing in church. Jonathan entered quietly, listening. You always play when you need strength, he said softly. Amara smiled faintly. It's not just strength. It's a reminder. A reminder that we've survived worse. Our people, our family, me. And no matter how much they try to smear my name, truth sings louder. She paused, her fingers resting on the keys. But Daddy, I can feel it, Blake isn't finished. He's desperate. Dangerous. He'll try something reckless. Jonathan nodded gravely. Then be ready, Amara. Because desperate men are the most dangerous kind. The hymn lingered in the air like a prayer. A prayer for justice. A prayer for resilience. A prayer for the storm still to come. The storm broke 3 days later. Carter Enterprises had called for an emergency shareholders meeting. The room was packed, executives in tailored suits, employees lining the walls, reporters buzzing with anticipation. Cameras rolled, broadcasting the event live. Amara entered first, walking steadily, dressed not in corporate gray but in deep royal blue. It wasn't just a color, it was a statement: calm, strength, heritage. Jonathan walked beside her, his cane tapping against the marble floor like a drumbeat announcing history. The moment they reached the podium, murmurs filled the room. This wasn't the timid intern the company once ignored. This was a leader. Amara began calmly. For too long, corruption has festered here. For too long, managers have abused workers while lining their own pockets. But no longer. She placed folders on the podium. Today, I present verified documentation of fraud, harassment cover-ups, and financial theft. I promised accountability, and it begins now. Gasps erupted. Cameras flashed. And then, the doors burst open. Blake Thompson stormed in, his face twisted with rage, security trailing behind him. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, but his voice thundered across the hall. This is a sham, he roared. She's manipulating you. This girl, this fraud, doesn't deserve this company. I built this place. Me. The crowd stirred uncomfortably. Some shareholders looked shaken, others defiant. Employees whispered nervously, glancing at Amara. But Amara didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice steady as stone. You built nothing, Blake. You stole. You lied. You silenced those who begged for justice. Blake's face reddened. You think you can erase me? You're nothing but a spoiled girl playing dress-up. You don't deserve to lead. Amara's eyes blazed. Maybe you've forgotten who I am. I'm not just Amara Carter, the intern you mocked. I am the daughter of Jonathan Carter, the man who built this company from nothing, brick by brick, against every barrier of racism and greed. And unlike you, Blake, I didn't inherit power. I earned it. I worked at every desk, learned every role, listened to every voice. This company doesn't need you. It never did. Applause broke out. First from the employees along the wall, then from shareholders tired of Blake's shadow, then from reporters who could sense history unfolding. Blake lunged toward the podium, but before he could reach it, security finally stepped in. They grabbed him firmly, twisting his arms behind his back. You can't do this to me. Blake screamed, his voice cracking. I'll ruin you. I'll ruin all of you. Amara looked him straight in the eye, her tone calm but unyielding. You already ruined yourself. Your greed did that, not me. As they dragged him out, cameras followed every step, capturing the fall of a man who thought himself untouchable. When silence returned, Amara lifted her chin and faced the shareholders. We will rebuild. We will restore trust. From this day forward, Carter Enterprises will be a place of dignity, not fear. Every worker will be valued. Every voice will be heard. Because this company was never meant to belong to the corrupt, it belongs to the people who keep it alive. Thunderous applause filled the hall. Employees wept openly. Reporters declared the moment historic. Jonathan leaned on his cane, his eyes shimmering. Your grandmother would have been proud, he whispered. Amara smiled faintly. This isn't just for us, Daddy. This is for every person who's ever been told they don't belong. That evening, Amara walked through the factory floor. Workers surrounded her, people who had once feared for their jobs now lifted her on their shoulders, chanting her name. The sound echoed like a hymn, like church on Sunday morning, like freedom ringing through the walls. She raised her hands, silencing the cheers. This is not just my victory, it's ours. Together, we ended corruption. Together, we reclaimed what was stolen. And together, we will build something greater. In the distance, the gospel hymn from her grandmother's piano seemed to rise again in her memory. We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord. Amara closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her like a blessing. The next morning, headlines blazed across every major outlet. Amara Carter cleans house, corrupt executive arrested in stunning showdown. Carter heiress redefines legacy, a new era of justice at Carter Enterprises. From intern to CEO, how Amara Carter sparked a corporate revolution. And in households across America, elders who had once marched in Selma, who had boycotted buses in Montgomery, who had seen dignity denied again and again, smiled. Because this wasn't just Amara's fight. It was theirs. Their resilience, their prayers, their legacy, carried forward. Amara Carter hadn't just exposed corruption. She had lit a torch, one that would burn long after the storm had passed. And in that flame, a message shone clear. Truth cannot be buried. Dignity cannot be erased. And legacy cannot be silenced.